What's up, everybody? This is Basil the White Dragon Masters here, and today we're going to talk about UFC 172. UFC 172. Glover Teixeira versus John Jones, which was the main event. But I'm going to cover the last three fights, which were all very interesting. Let me start off by saying that the fight card was definitely good. Interesting fight card. Obviously, I'm going to talk about the last main three fights. Otherwise, this video is going to be forever. But overall, the prelims were very good as well. I think Gomi did an excellent job. That was a good fight, and some of the main event fights were good too. But let's talk mainly about the three fights right here. I'm going to start off with the Luke Rockhold versus Tim Boetsch fight, which was for the middleweight division. I love Luke Rockhold. He's one of my favorite fighters. I really like that guy. He is a very interesting fighter who came off of Strikeforce, and he did very well. Unfortunately, when he came into the UFC, he got caught with a spinning heel kick against Vitor Belfort. Not the best debut, but anyway, then his last fight, he just finished a guy called Costa Philippou with his kick. In this fight against Tim Boetsch, which I thought was going to be a very hard fight because Tim Boetsch is a tough fucking guy. He's probably one of those hunting big white guys, the gritty white guys. If you get hit by this guy, you're going down. So personally, I thought it was going to go for at least a couple of rounds, at least 2 rounds. But to my surprise, Luke Rockhold finished him within round 1. He finished him in round 1 very quickly, and he submitted him in a very odd submission that I haven't seen. I mean, I've seen a triangle before, but I've never seen a triangle, at least not in the UFC, the triangle with a Kimura. That was it was beautifully done. Beautiful jiu-jitsu. I mean, it was excellent how he set up the triangle and choked him, and then he got him with the Kimura. So hats up to Luke Rockhold. He's got a bright future if he keeps doing what he's doing. So that fight, Luke did a great job. So good job, man. Let's move on to Anthony Johnson versus Phil Davis. I was really looking forward to this fight because I personally met Anthony Johnson in Las Vegas when I went to see Evans versus Silva, and he was a big guy, but back then he was fighting for 170, starving himself. This guy walks at, I'm a 205er. I walk at like 220 pounds. This guy walks at like 245, 250. He was a big guy when I met him. Much bigger than me. Big. And this guy used to cut down to 170. I'm talking like 3% body fat. This guy was he was still good, but he wasn't doing great. And he had trouble making weight, like we all know in the UFC. This guy was having a lot of trouble. But then he went up on weight class. And then he went to heavyweight. He beat Andre Arlovsky at heavyweight. And then his natural weight class, which should have been 205 from the get-go. This guy he had excellent conditioning. He wasn't tired. He basically whooped Phil Davis's ass. Phil got his ass handed to him, literally, round 1. And, round 1, basically Phil got beat the entire time. And then round 2, Phil comes out with a little bit of, he comes out a little bit cautious. He uses his kicks a little bit better. He tries his best. But Anthony was a beast, man. This guy was just dogging him and stalking him, the entire fight. I'm glad. I'm surprised that Phil hung in there with this guy because Phil didn't want. After the first few shots that Phil got from him, you could clearly see from his face that he didn't want to be in there. He didn't want to be in this fight. You could see it clearly. He tried his best, and then round 3 was pretty much the same as round 2, and that was it. Went to 5 rounds, and Anthony won. I wasn't surprised, but he really beat his ass pretty well, and he cemented himself in this weight class. So we'll be looking out for a much better fighter, Anthony Johnson, and for the light heavyweight division, which is the 205 pounds. Moving on to the final fight. Glover Teixeira versus Jon Jones. To be honest with you, I had predicted this fight from the very get-go. I knew that Glover Teixeira was not going to win this fight. I knew it. I just knew it. For me, it was kind of like a replica or a replicant of the Jon Jones versus Quinton Rampage Jackson fight. I sort of saw that kind of fight. I thought it was pretty much like that, except Glover hung in there for 5 rounds. The same thing with Jon Jones and Rampage. Rampage was looking for that one knockout punch. We all knew that Glover had a puncher's chance, but Jon's reach and the way he does something that's a little bit like cheating. He does this a lot. He likes to extend his hands out, and he pokes people in the eye. And I don't know why the referee didn't violate him. I mean, he did it once or twice, but this guy does this a lot, and I don't know if this is really fair. Because you're pushing people's head. I mean, you're putting your hand and you're pushing it out, and then if somebody tries to come in, 9 out of 10 he's gonna run into your claws. So, it's kind of like